The movie opens with an ominous voice mimicking the voice of top officials of the US government, and here we get to know that it is the voice of the deadly artificial intelligence named Entity, and it has brought the world to the edge of Armageddon. It can mimic anyone, alter the reality in the digital world, breach any of the topmost secure data centers, and also breach the security of nuclear arsenals. The scene cuts to our protagonist, Ethan, who is in possession of the one item the Entity fears the most, the key which unlocks the source code of the artificial intelligence. Ethan has gone off the radar and trusts only himself with the key, as if it falls in the wrong hands will bring catastrophe to the entire world. In the next scene, we are shown that he has received a message from the President of the United States. At first, she shows her gratitude as he has been serving the country and saving the world for 3 decades, and despite sacrificing his personal life, he never stopped and continued to fulfill his missions. She adds that the Entity has infiltrated cyberspace and has altered it in such a way that people no longer know what is the truth or what is a lie. Hence, she pleads to him to return and surrender the key to the government. But Ethan is still doubtful as he suspects that his own government will try to control the Entity and use it against other nations. After giving her message some serious thought, Ethan meets up with his old teammate named Benji. They make their journey through an unknown tunnel and reach an isolated hideout where they are united with an old friend and another team member named Luther. He welcomes Ethan and Benji, and here we get to know that Luther has been working on a software that can kill this Entity, and he names it the Poison Pill. But for it to destroy the Entity, it needs to be attached to the source code of the Entity. But the problem is that the source code lies inside a sunken Russian submarine named Sevastopol. Ethan reveals that they need to meet with Gabriel, who is a henchman of this evil AI, and was a former acquaintance of Ethan. Ethan wishes to come face to face with this Entity so that he can learn more about how it works, and for this, they need to locate and hunt down Gabriel. To fulfill this objective, Ethan and Benji disguise themselves as prison guards and, using their expertise on the field, free Paris, who is a former associate of Gabriel. But as he tried to kill her, she turned against him. They are also joined by a special force soldier named Degas, who was supposed to escort Paris to a new prison, but seeing the gravity of the situation, decides to join forces with Ethan and his team so that he can contribute to the safety of the world. Paris leads them to a luxurious party where Gabriel is supposed to be present, but here Ethan meets with another one of his team members, Grace. But as fate would have it, they are apprehended by Gabriel's henchmen, and they use the element of surprise and capture Ethan and Grace by electrocuting them. The scene shifts to Gabriel's hideout where Gabriel's henchmen have tied Ethan and Grace, and he intends to extract key from Ethan. Here it is revealed that the Entity has abandoned Gabriel as he failed to secure the key from Ethan in the previous movie. Now Gabriel wants to possess the key and the source code so that he can have dominion over this all-powerful artificial intelligence. Gabriel makes a shocking revelation as he says that a few years ago, in order to save his wife, Ethan had stolen something known as the rabbit's foot, assuming it to be a biochemical weapon, and handed it over to his wife's kidnapper. In reality, the rabbit's foot was not a biochemical weapon, but an extremely powerful virus which helped in creating the Entity. This makes Ethan responsible for the creation of the Entity. Ethan threatens to kill himself with cyanide hidden inside his mouth in a fake tooth. Gabriel does not believe him, and this is when Ethan bites the tooth, and Gabriel tries to resuscitate him. But as it turns out, it was not cyanide, and at the critical moment when Gabriel was going to give Ethan electrical shock via a defibrillator, he used his skills to free himself and started a violent fight. Grace also manages to uncuff herself, and as Gabriel needs the key, he hesitates to kill Ethan, and this gives Ethan the opportunity to put down all the goons, but Gabriel manages to escape the scene. Ethan and Grace give chase, but being a seasoned agent himself, Gabriel slips away. But Ethan finds the metal casket where he can communicate with the Entity. Although warned by his team members, he decides to contact the evil artificial intelligence. The Entity appears in the form of a virtual reality and shows Ethan that it is capable enough to rule the entire world. It explains that humanity has reached its peak, and from this point, the situation is only going to go downhill as they are now governed by greed and violence. The Entity offers a free world, free from all the chaos and violence. But for this to happen, the others need to die. Here it reveals that it will take control of the nuclear arsenal all around the world and will launch all the nuclear missiles, simultaneously destroying all the superpowers. It will lead to the death of billions, but those who survive will be guided by the Entity to create a better world. At the end, It shows Ethan that Gabriel has planned to kill Luther on that very night and take the poison pill into his possession, and he plans to do this while Luther is getting treatment. The entity chooses Ethan to be its minion, and when he denies, it electrocutes him. It adds that in order to survive the nuclear disaster, the entity needs to store itself inside the safest digital vault in South Africa, also known as the Doomsday Vault. As a final warning, the entity tells Ethan that humankind will have its final reckoning after 72 hours. After this, it releases Ethan and he crumbles down in fear. But after a few moments, he thinks of a plan and writes down a few key materials that they would need to beat the entity. These components are a VHF receiver, a decompression chamber, a plane with no transponder and no GPS with everything analog, and a SOSA station. He writes the materials down in a piece of paper and gives it to Benji, and then assigns him as the team leader. Ethan directs him to head to the north where the submarine Sevastopol sank and runs off to save Luther. Ethan runs for quite some time, but after he finds Luther, he sees that he is late and Gabriel has already locked Luther inside a metal gate. To add to the problems, Gabriel has also set up a nuclear device with a timer, and as the countdown begins, Luther explains that he can disarm part of the nuclear device but cannot disarm it entirely. This means that in order to save the place and the people around it, Luther must stay back and disarm as much of the device as he can, and when the remaining part explodes, Luther will die. Ethan tries to resist, but Luther explains that this is the only way out. With tears in their eyes, the comrades bid farewell to each other. Ethan runs as fast as possible, and when the device explodes, we understand that Luther is no more. As soon as Ethan manages to avoid the explosion, he gets caught by Kittredge, the director of CIA, and Agent Briggs, the head of Special Division Task Force. Ethan is taken to the President of the United States and is ordered to hand over the key which unlocks the entity's source code. Ethan explains himself and his actions and states clearly that, whatever he has done, his actions have led to the betterment of the world and that he has avoided many disasters. He urges the President to provide him with an aircraft carrier, preferably the George H.W. Bush. Ethan plans to kill the entity. This is where Angstrom, the National Security Advisor, and Richards, the Director of National Intelligence, state that the annihilation of the entity will lead to the destruction of cyberspace, leading to a loss which will be irreparable. The President, Erica, informs Ethan that all the nuclear arsenals of all the countries except the US, UK, China, and Russia have been compromised and the entity has taken control of the nuclear missiles. Ethan replies that there is no other choice but to let him go and achieve this last mission. But all the officials present in the room oppose him. Ethan adds that the entity is growing stronger with each passing second and is adapting itself to spread all around the internet. He informs them that they have no more than 72 hours, after which the entity will be strong enough to infiltrate and take control of all the nuclear arsenal of the United States. He insists in having control of the George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier and a nuclear submarine, both of which must follow each and every one of his requests. The President gives him back the key and also provides him with a sealed envelope which needs to be handed over to the commander of the George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier. Ethan reaches the aircraft carrier via a helicopter and hands over the envelope to Commander Nellie. Here we see that it contains a date, May 22nd, 1996. Upon seeing this, Commander Nellie is taken aback. Here we get to know that, previously Nellie and President Erica were colleagues, and on May 22nd, 1996, both of them lost their beloved ones because their higher-ups won't take the much-needed risks which were required at that time. This leads us to understand that President Erica has agreed to give Ethan all that he needs to fulfill this last mission. Ethan tells Nellie that his team is looking for a SOSA station, namely a sound surveillance system. It's a worldwide network of acoustic cables dating back to the Cold War. If any undersea event of great significance occurs, the SOSA systems will pick up the exact position of the occurrence. This means that the data and the location of the place where Sevastopol submarine struck the ocean floor will also be recorded by a SOSA station. As per the recent reports, as the bodies of the crew members of the Sevastopol submarine was found in the Arctic, this means that the SOSA station in the Bering Sea, in St. Matthews Island, will have the data about the exact location of the destroyed submarine. The team needs to visit this SOSA station located in St. Matthews Island and retrieve the location of the submarine and transmit it to Ethan via VHF frequency. On the other hand, Ethan would need a submarine which would be able to intercept this VHF data from Benji. This is when we understand why Ethan wrote Sosis in the piece of paper which he handed over to Benji after contacting the entity. Benji was asked to relay this location every 2 hours for 15 minutes each term, so that Ethan would be able to receive it as per his convenience from a submarine. Nellie agrees to help him and to get him in touch with an Ohio-class submarine led by Captain Bledsoe. She sends a message to Captain Bledsoe about the arrival of Ethan and gives him an Osprey helicopter to bring him near the Ohio submarine. Upon reaching the proximity of the Ohio submarine, they are confronted by Russian fighter jets, as it is international ocean territory. Seeing no other way, Ethan jumps into the ice-cold water, and this is when he is met with U.S. Marines who take him to Captain Bledsoe. Ethan introduces himself and requests them to wait for the VHF frequency data which Benji and the team will be sending him for 15 minutes every 2 hours. On the other hand, Kittredge and Briggs plan to capture Ethan as they do not believe in his competence. Benji and his team reach the Sosis station in St. Matthews Island and are met by William Donlow, a former CIA analyst, and his wife, Tepessa. They are welcomed, and here we learn that William was always aware of the entity and had warned the government in the past, but his warnings fell on deaf ears. Grace requests the Sosis data from December 2012, as that was the month when the submarine Sevastopol was destroyed. In a shocking twist of events, we see that Russian Special Force soldiers are already waiting in the same station. They take everyone hostage and demand the Sosis data from December 2012. William agrees to help as he needs to protect his wife. Grace and Benji try to reason with the Russian soldiers, but they still behave in a hostile manner even when the fate of the world is at stake. A severe fight breaks out and Grace, Benji, Degas, and Paris get into a fight with the Russian Special Forces. During the battle, the station catches fire, and William takes this opportunity to relay the much-needed location via VHF frequency. Although the station gets completely engulfed by fire, each one of the team members, along with William and his wife, manage to get out unharmed. Captain Bledsoe receives the VHF frequency, and Ethan gets the exact location of the submerged submarine, Sevastopol. This is when they understand that they are followed by a deadly Russian submarine, Belgorod. Ethan decides to prepare himself and suits up so that he can exit the submarine and recover the source code of the entity without letting the Russians know about his motives. On the other hand, Grace sets off with the inflatable hyperbaric decompression chamber. Ethan exits the Ohio submarine and manages to avoid a collision with the Russian submarine, Belgorod, by the skin of teeth. He continues to dive deeper and manages to locate Sevastopol, and we see that it is in an extremely damaged state. He enters the submarine and navigates his way through the rooms and the dead bodies inside it. But as he continues his search, the torpedoes inside the submarine collide with each other, leading to the submarine to roll underwater. This only adds to the trouble as the submarine was lying quite a few hundred meters below sea level, and the submarine rolling due to the torpedoes made Ethan's job of searching the source code even tougher. After trying for quite some time, Ethan manages to locate the keyhole and uses his key to unlock the source code, and after retrieving it, tries to exit the wreck as fast as possible. But this task turns out to be much harder than he assumed. The falling torpedoes make his escape harder. He tries to fit through a torpedo vent, but his suit gets stuck. At this critical moment, he decides to open his suit and binds the source code with a strap around his neck and pushes himself and the oxygen cylinder inside the torpedo vent so that he can exit quickly. Using all his strength, he manages to exit the wreck, along with his oxygen cylinder and the source code. But this is when the submarine gives way and starts to sink even deeper through a crack in the ocean floor. But the situation gets even more precarious when the oxygen cylinder gets hooked to the tail of the falling submarine. Seeing no other option, Ethan lets go of it and tries to reach the surface along with the source code. But this is when his body reaches its limit. Due to the huge pressure of water, he loses control of his muscles and loses consciousness, and we see him slowly floating towards the surface while being unconscious. Thankfully, Grace rescues him in the nick of time and resuscitates him inside the hyperbaric chamber. After he comes to his senses, she hands him the source code, thereby completing the first phase of their mission. In the second phase of the mission, they need to retrieve the poison pill from Gabriel and combine it with the source code in order to kill the entity. They board a plane with William, Tepessa, Grace, Benji, Ethan, Degas, and Paris in it. It is here that we get to know that they are traveling to the Doomsday Vault, because Gabriel will be there with the poison pill, waiting for Ethan so that he can forcefully confiscate the source code, which is also known as the Podkova. We also see that before dying, Luther had invented a 5D optical drive with 360 terabytes of storage, and it is the prison in which they will be capturing the entity. The plan is to allow the entity to enter the Doomsday Vault, but just before it initiates an all-out nuclear launch, they will capture it in the 5D optical drive. We also learn that Grace can only trap the entity after Ethan connects the Podkova with the poison pill. For this, they will have 100 milliseconds after Ethan connects the Podkova with the pill, and even if they are late by 1 millisecond, the entity will be able to navigate out of the drive. This is why Ethan assigns Grace to do this job, as she has the fastest hands in the team. As they arrive outside the Doomsday Vault, they witness an abandoned base. This means that everyone from the military knows about the probable fate of the world and has gone to their families to spend the last precious moments of their lives. On the other hand, the top government officials urge the president to push the nuclear button, and for a few seconds, she also gives in to their demands and almost carries out a nuclear strike all over the world to subjugate all the other nuclear powers in the world. But at the last moment, she decides not to push the button. Her subordinates disagree with her, but she has made up her mind and wants to give Ethan as much time as possible and tries to order the nuclear command center to go offline. But before she can do so, one of her bodyguards loses his composure and tries to shoot the president, but General Sidney takes the bullet and kills the man. The president remains safe, but General Sidney takes his last breath. Alarm blares, and we are shown that the entity has taken control of the U.S. nuclear arsenal along with UK, China, and Russia. Next, we see Ethan and Gabriel coming face to face, and Gabriel and his henchmen threaten Ethan to surrender the Podkova. Ethan pretends to agree, and it is at this moment that Kittredge and Briggs arrive and hold Gabriel at gunpoint. They still believe that they can control the entity. But Gabriel was not someone who would give up so easily. It is revealed that he had already placed nuclear explosives outside the vault, and when held at gunpoint, he initiated the countdown. Ethan's entire team also gets caught by the soldiers brought by Kittredge and Briggs. But while both of them are distracted, Gabriel orders his henchmen to open fire on everyone, and chaos ensues. Gabriel takes this opportunity to escape the scene along with the poison pill, as he knows that Ethan needs the pill, and, in order to retrieve it, he will follow him to the world's end. Ethan follows Gabriel, leaving all the other team members behind along with the optical drive. While giving chase, Gabriel's goons try to stop him, but Ethan gives a good fight and wins. But in the process, his car tumbles, and he is forced to chase on foot. But Gabriel boards a light aircraft, and Ethan, being on foot, is no match for its speed. Favored by luck, he sees a goon taking off with his aircraft, and Ethan seizes this opportunity to grab onto the plane. He tries hard to hang onto the aircraft and does his best to knock the goon out and take control of the machine. On the other end, we see William trying to disarm the nuclear device before the time runs out. But upon investigating the structure of the device, he discloses that after he cuts the wire, they will have a 10-second window to run inside the vault and safeguard themselves. He asks Benji, Paris, and Grace to go inside the vault beforehand and try to trap the entity inside the drive. Degas stays with William and Tepeza to guard them against any threat. Inside the vault, Benji reveals that he was shot during the firing, and Paris does her best to keep Benji awake and tends to his wounds. Ethan, on the other hand, is chasing Gabriel, and neither of the parties is willing to lose the battle. He manages to climb onto Gabriel's aircraft, and a fierce battle follows. Ethan hangs on the wings of the aircraft, while Gabriel tries to shake him off. Mid-flight, Gabriel tries to stab Ethan with a knife, but Ethan manages to evade all his attacks and breaks his arm. He also manages to snatch the pill and knocks him out with a punch. Next, he enters the cockpit to take control of the aircraft, eventually throwing Gabriel from his seat. Gabriel tries to escape, but before he could do so, he gets struck by the tail of the plane and loses his life and falls down. Ethan tries hard to control the aircraft, but the engine malfunctions and he is forced to eject. We see Ethan's team waiting impatiently for him to connect the Podkova and the pill. While falling down with his parachute, Ethan successfully connects the two devices, and a green LED indicated his success, and the entity gets inside the 5D optical drive. Grace wastes no time, and within 100 milliseconds, disconnects the 5D optical drive from the system, thereby trapping the entity for good. William, Tepeza, and Degas also manage to run inside the vault before the nuclear device explodes. The world is saved and Ethan completes his last and most dangerous mission. The president gets the news and is relieved, and so are the other officials. The pill also contained a farewell message from Luther, in which he expressed his gratitude towards Ethan and wished him the best for his future. Kittredge and Briggs arrive at Ethan's location, but Kittredge is disheartened to see the Podkova destroyed, but Briggs makes peace with Ethan. In the ending moments of the movie, we see the team meeting at an unknown location, sharing warm smiles, and Grace hands Ethan the entity, which is locked inside the drive. The team departs, and this is how the movie ends. If you like this recap, please like the video and subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications for more such recap videos.